ties to Greek life, the fraternity and sorority social class system, and all four would soon become international obsessions. It was the brutality of the murders that drew public attention, and then, with no arrests made in the initial weeks, citizen sleuths took the investigation into their own hands. They stalked the victims' social media profiles, looking for clues, and started YouTube channels and TikTok profiles dedicated solely to the case. And because many had monetized their channels, a frenzy of knockoff channels soon began, with millions of international followers possessing no investigative expertise now speculating on the crimes. The victims were out of central casting: Kaylee and Maddie, movie star blondes; Ethan, a young John F. Kennedy Jr. or Robert Pattinson lookalike, tall and sturdy-jawed, and always alongside his girlfriend, Xana, who fit perfectly under his arm in photos, her smile seeming to buoy him. They all looked good on camera, and the mainstream media took notice. The town of Moscow seemed to have lost its innocence overnight, and many in this normally trusting community, where doors were often left unlocked, almost immediately ordered security cameras for the exteriors of their homes. Some students even began carrying concealed handguns on their walks through campus. In this deeply red state, no permits were required. Fox and News Nation were the first to descend upon Moscow to cover the official investigation, and soon every major network in America would arrive. The paparazzi also showed up in droves, taking photographs of the murder house, as it became known, at 1122 King Road. One of the victims' fathers, Steve Gonsalves, spoke to a Fox reporter in front of the Moscow police station on a bitter cold night when the investigation was just days old, exhaling in frustration when he revealed that he'd been asked by investigators not to disclose what the coroner had told him, how his daughter had been brutalized. Requests for silence are standard early in homicide cases, but Gonsalves, in a cat-branded sweatshirt and ball cap, his eyes ice cold in the middle, but beet red at the rims from crying, wasn't having it. "I paid for that funeral," he said, and nobody was going to tell him what he could or could not speak to the press about, not while the cops were still looking, seemingly unsuccessfully, for his daughter's killer. "You ain't taking that from me." His daughter had come back to him, in a box, he'd added bluntly, then stumbled over his words. The loss, compounded by the pressure of not knowing who'd done this to his little girl, or why, was buckling him. Gonsalves' wife, Christy, nudged him on camera. "Calm down," she'd said quietly. Every hotel in this little town was soon booked, all the parking spots taken, and the international spotlight cast hotly onto Moscow Chief of Police James Fry, who began holding daily news conferences to appease the public hunger for information. At the first of them, Chief Fry explained that the crime scene was the worst he'd ever seen. Investigators had found no murder weapon, and they currently had no leads, none they were speaking of, anyway. Eventually, Fry added emotionally, "We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there." He was teary-eyed, and neither the cameras nor the world could look away. Part 1. Chapter 1. On November 12, 2022, Kaylee Gonsalves and Maddie Mogan, college roommates and best friends since middle school, headed out for a night of fun at the Corner Club bar in downtown Moscow, Idaho. It was an overcast Saturday night following an afternoon when the national headlines had been dominated by two large planes that had collided in midair and then burst into flames, cartwheeling to the ground and shutting down a Dallas freeway. Not that most college kids in this town paid much attention to the daily news elsewhere in the country. Moscow was a hideaway from many of the world's stresses, which made it a special place. The mountains were wrapped around the community, and it felt cozy inside that blanket of simple living. The temperature outside in Moscow that night was 32 degrees, the exact freezing point, but Idaho kids became accustomed to harsh weather. Kaylee wore only a light sweatshirt and jeans with trendy holes across the knees, white sneakers on her feet. Maddie wore jeans frayed at the bottoms like Kaylee's, and a pink, form-fitting midriff t-shirt beneath a black jacket big enough to belong to somebody's father, the arms overly floppy, the hem hanging to her thighs.